Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for February 4th to 10th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 3 TV shows, and I listened to 1 book. First this week I finished Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is the first in a duology, although I thought this was a standalone when I started it, so beware of the cliffhanger. This takes place in a society that fell to anarchism a few decades ago, in which some people are born with or develop superpowers. The reason for the age of anarchism was to free those with superpowers from the oppression of the masses. Unfortunately, when society failed, violence rose. To combat the violent gangs, a group of superheroes came together to form the Renegades. This book plays with notions of good and evil and how we often believe that we are in the right, and any extreme actions we take are simply to deter the actions of others. There are tons of interesting superhero powers, morally corrupt good guys, socially accepted queer leaders, and strong motives for the 2 main characters, which are hard to get into because I feel strongly about not spoiling what happens in the first chapter. I got caught up in the characters and how morally gray the situation seemed, and I really hope the next book comes out soon. It is currently untitled, but the expected publication date is November of this year. The next book I finished this week was Draw the Line by Laurent Lin. This is about a boy who draws his own comic, and although he's out as gay to his 2 best friends, he's kept that secret at school and at home for fear of being bullied. Adrian spends most of his time at school in muted grays so he can seep into the background, whereas grays and blacks and whites are what fuel his art when he's alone. This book is full of Adrian's doodles and comic about a gay superhero who lives in a Renaissance castle on the moon rather than beating up bad guys. Adrian witnesses a hate crime and is the only one to speak up about it. The perpetrator receives some agonizing preferential treatment, and Adrian turns to his art to get justice. I really enjoyed this book, and it has been my favorite read of this month so far. There was mystery, character complexity, and even an unexpected romance. The author, Laurent Lin, is also the illustrator and has a background at the Jim Henson Company and Sesame Street before he became an art director at Simon & Schuster, which is interesting to know because I think both of those worlds show up in the narrative of this book. My final read this week was Pilot X by Tom Merritt. This novel is about a race of time travelers, so although we follow the protagonist, who we'll just call Pilot X for simplicity's sake, from the beginning of his life to the end of the book, we jump around in time. That being said, this book also starts at the end and then Tarantino's to the beginning, so nothing is linear. This book, as you might have guessed, gets a bit confusing at times. Much like the plot, the career of Pilot X isn't linear, so his name is constantly changing to suit his rank. There were a few hidden gems in the writing where the author made reference to a world much more familiar to the reader than the world in which Pilot X resides. There were also 2 other races that had very different physiology and relationship to time travel, so it was interesting to see how those groups functioned and how the author played with those realities. This book takes a lot of mental focus, so if you're looking to read for enjoyment and time travel isn't your thing, this is probably not for you. It is, however, pretty short and easy to jump through if you just need a fix of space or a sassy AI best friend. This week in Riverdale, we got another glimpse of Black Betty, and the show has yet to make use of the song Black Betty, so I'm still looking forward to that. The first season of Survivor continues to make it feel like Jeff is this character that just seems so young and he's grown so much over the seasons, when in reality he's a real person that has just aged over the last couple of decades. The majority of my watching time this week has been dedicated to not 1, not 2, but 3 seasons of Black Mirror. At this point, the 5th season of this show has not yet been confirmed. I'm glad to say that at least a couple of the episodes ended happily, so not every single episode makes you think that we're all doomed, but this show continued to be intense. I think my favorite episode of the moment, because it could change on Rewatch, is the Christmas episode at the end of the 2nd season. I enjoyed that it made huge references to the episodes before it, although I didn't catch a reference to the first episode if it was present. I also enjoyed that this self-reference continued throughout the series, so you would see characters reading a comic based on a previous episode, or episode clips presented as though they were violent moments from which you should shield your children. The Black Museum in the 4th season features many items from previous episodes. I have a feeling that this is the type of show that I could pick up more and more nuance through continued rewatching. This week I listened to Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. It came up in conversation that I didn't really care for the one Agatha Christie book I had read, which was The Body in the Library, which I discussed with my friend Peter in an airport, so you can check that out here or down in the links. The Body in the Library is a Miss Marple book, and she annoys me as a character because she doesn't do any of her own detective work, so it kind of seems like a deus ex machina when she solves the crime. Since Murder on the Orient Express is a Poirot book, I decided I would give it a try. I did enjoy this protagonist more, and that might have something to do with Kenneth Branagh's gorgeous narration. The majority of this book takes place while the detective is on a train back to London. A sinister man approaches him and asks for his help because he thinks that he's going to be murdered. Poirot declines, and the next day the man is found dead. The train has also been stopped in the middle of nowhere because of snow, and one of the board members, also traveling on the train, asks Poirot to solve the murder. Unfortunately, I heard someone else talking about this book recently, and instead of giving a spoiler-free synopsis in the one line they tossed out, they basically stated the answer to the whodunit. Here's a pro tip: don't start your description of a murder mystery that someone might not have read with, you know, the one who, and then finish it with whodunit. This meant I spent the whole book not really examining the clues to try to figure it out for my own, but continually wondering if what I'd heard was the truth. It was, although the exact ending came as a surprise. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you next time. Bye!